Welcome to Kindness in Motion. Now, before we dive in, I want us to start with a moment that captures why this podcast exists. So, Parry, the world feels heavy sometimes, doesn't it?
It does. And I think that's why this conversation matters.
Because kindness isn't a luxury. Hello, I'm Suzy.
And I'm Parry.
And we are the Kindness in Motion podcast, a podcast where we explore the many different subjects around kindness. And I do believe Parry is going to be the boss of this one.
Suzy was stuck as to what our topic would be for this session. And we've had quite a few conversations about how both of us are pretty naff being kind to ourselves in the same way that we would like to be kind to others. So we decided that this session, mainly for us to work out our issues, a conversation about self-kindness and why it's important, what exactly it means, what it looks like, and just wherever our conversation leads.
I don't think you'll mind me saying this,
No.
will you? Are really rubbish at being kind to ourselves, but we do a good job of being kind to others. But not being kind to ourselves does have some pretty unpleasant side effects.
Yeah, I think it's only recently that I've noticed, and it really since we've started doing this podcast and talking about kindness as a thing and becoming more mindful of how it shows up in my life and how I practice it. I've started catching my own habits and thinking, hey, that's not a very kind way or compassionate way of treating yourself. It used to be, for me, it's for so many people, just an autopilot response.
Yeah.
And so I think catching it and recognizing it is sometimes one of the first steps to moving towards being kinder.
Yes, and that is actually so true, because I think, again, to have our listeners' ears and get feedback, and they often ask, how can I be kind to myself? And my only advice is write a journal, people. Yeah, because that's all I know how to process what is going on.
So when you're doing that journal, what is it that lets you know that that's an act of kindness for yourself? What is it?
I think for me, what happens is, because, as you were aware, this journal is going to be fed into my one-woman show, which apparently on TikTok I shouldn't say.
Like a 90s sitcom.
Oh, yeah, that was so bad, but so good at the same time. Thanks for that.
Anyway, sorry, I diverted.
Ooh, welcome to ADHD.
Yeah, so before we moved on to ADHD, you were talking about your one-woman show.
Oh, God, yes.
You're journaling.
So the journaling has allowed me to pour out a lot of my history in a safe space.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that takes a lot of pressure off me to stop worrying about whether I'm making a difference or whether this is good enough, and just going, I'm going to focus on me.
Have that space just to be like, this is room for my expression, my experience. It's not gonna be owned by anyone else. It's not there to please anyone else. It's not there to... But right now, the act of doing it is exploratory for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been an eye-opener. And I would say to anybody, I have found that it is a kind of self-therapy as well. You're able to explore in a safe space. If you want to burn it afterwards, go ahead.
Yeah, and I suppose there's something about getting those thoughts out on paper so that you can read them back as well, right? I spend a lot of time deconstructing and thinking about stuff, but I very rarely write it down and commit it to paper. This morning I did something. I sent a list to someone about things that I was grateful for, and I think about that all the time.
Yeah.
And I practice mindful gratitude, but I don't often share it with people.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so that new practice for me was like, oh, wait a second, this thing's actually going to be like received by someone. It's not just there in my head. Even when I was writing it down, I was like, this feels weird, putting it down onto paper. That kind of helped to cement it and solidify it and make it more real
That
as something.
is really good, and
that-
you should be very proud of that one little action, because when we talk about being self-kind to ourselves, it doesn't have to be huge.
No, and quite often it's the little thing that we just don't make time for or don't allow ourselves that can be massively meaningful gestures of kindness to ourselves.
It's hard work. Me, like yoga and mindfulness, all the fantastic buzzwords that are going around now.
I think it can feel really jarring. We had a little conversation about this, but there can be so many other narratives attached to taking a moment out for yourself. Well, it's not even taking a moment out for yourself, but paying attention to yourself in a way that's kind, because it can feel selfish,
Yes.
indulgent. I don't know. What are your experiences?
To me personally, it feels like you're being disingenuous, imposter syndrome.
Right.
I'm truly grateful to have you in my life.
Yeah.
I'm truly grateful that I've got the masters to distract me from my own brain. Although, no, that doesn't work anymore, does it? Because the masters is my brain.
Yeah, but I think there's a big difference as well between knowing that you appreciate something and having an intellectual gratitude and actually taking a moment to feel that gratitude and
Yeah.
let it be embodied and really resonate. And that takes time that a lot of people don't have. And so to carve that out feels really indulgent for me.
Yeah. If you're investing in anything, I would say invest in wellness stuff, because people want to feel better about themselves and they are willing to throw out good cash to books that basically tell you to be grateful, to do this, be thankful for every time you wake up.
It's true that it can look different for everyone, right?
Mhm.
Because everyone has different needs and everyone has different internal worlds. And
I think for me, it should be free. That is because it is so fundamental to our well-being that people having to pay. It's a bit like me when I was dealing with the writer's way. Now, if anybody is interested in writing, it's a brilliant tool. But it kept saying about this greater something or other that is in you that will allow you to write. When I started to connect literally with me, like the brain finally felt like it was a part of the whole body, it made sense, because I always said when I was a kid that when people pray, they're not praying up into the ether.
so it's a really kind of mindful moment. And yeah, like prayer is an act of self-kindness.
And it's free.
And it's free. There you
See?
go, Susie. You can start praying. It's not a commodity.
No.
No one's
Believe me.
commoditized religion yet.
So, back to the story on self-kindness and how important it actually is.
And bear in mind, we are just two absolute. I'm trying not to say anything too offensive, but we are two loonies having this conversation from a place of relatively low knowledge base and just really sharing our intuitions with each other.
There's going to be a lot of other people who are listening now who will be like, that's how I feel, that this commodity of wellness has become too much. And I think it's saturated the market as well.
I honestly think that a lot of the boom around mindfulness and meditation and that kind of stuff is actually more of a coping mechanism in response to really unhealthy cultural habits that society as a whole is practicing. And it's meant as a commodified remedy to salve the pain as opposed to actually looking at root causes of the problems.
Do you know what? We cannot avoid COVID, because that had such an impact on everybody. And for me, it gave me peace and space to just be me. The silence was, oh, I loved it. But for others, they did find it difficult being shut down. So I think that's part of the reason why after that environment, we get thrown back into the normal society, and it has changed. We can't avoid acknowledging that.
So what changes from COVID would you like to carry forward?
I think there was a much better sense of community with COVID. I know that sounds weird. How can you have community if you're stuck in your own
Yeah,
house?
I felt the opposite. I found it incredibly isolating.
Yeah. But if you were in a good space, you would have your neighbours who you've never spoken to before say, I'm going to the supermarket. Do you want anything? That sort of thing.
To be fair, credit to my flatmates, we were each other's like rocks during that time.
Mm,
And so I did have relationships, but I think for me, just because I was in London and I
mm.
used to get so full by going out into the city and being in the rush and the buzz of strangers and feeling the pulse of the city around me. And I couldn't do that because there was no pulse, because everything had gone quiet.
Oh,
And
but
so,
I would have loved to have been in London.
yeah,
I would have walked for miles because the one thing when I used to live in London, the best time was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and there's barely anybody there. The streets are empty. There's hardly any cars apart from a few
just the
taxis.
foxes.
It's so good that you did have your flatmates with you. For me, I was on my own with the little puppy,
Mhm.
and I but had Blaze, but he was 18.
Blaze was
So,
your dog
oh
beforehand.
yeah, sorry people. Blaze was my love of my life, the most annoying Shih Tzu in the world, but he was just so cool. But unfortunately, during the lockdown, he fell ill, and it was old age. So I feel so sorry for my other dog, Felicia. Felicia grew up in the COVID period, and her social skills are not good because obviously every time we went out and played, there was no one there. There were no other dogs for her to respond to. And so as a little puppy, she grew up in a bubble.
Yeah.
And I had seen the difference between how Felicia and Bugsy related to the world.
So, what other ways did you find to practice self kindness and compassion during the COVID period?
That was it for me. It really was. It was just, I tried doing the feel good thing, which was to make uniforms,
Right.
and I'd get distracted. I had 6 cut out, and I only ever managed over, what was it, 2 years to get one out.
Okay.
And even that one was a bit dodge. But you know,
What were
hopefully
the uniforms for? I'd never
the
heard of this
nurses,
initiative. Oh,
because of the risks of spreading infection, they had to have scrubs. I don't know if you remember the whole thing about PCP uniforms.
PPE.
PPE,
Yeah.
they were supposed to protect them. They soon discovered they did not. So they put out a call, I think it was on Facebook. So again, this is another form of kindness. It was an act of kindness towards the nurses who were having to constantly change their uniforms.
Did that make you feel part of something bigger?
It did make me feel like part of something bigger, but then I didn't do it. So I started to feel that I was the problem. So
Right, okay.
it had a detrimental effect on my mental health because I don't like failing. And when you have something sat there and it could be done in half an hour, as soon as you've cut the stuff out, it's whiz, whiz, whiz.
So, what do you think it was that was the barrier to you doing the thing?
Fear that
Fear
it would be judged.
that it would be judged,
Yeah,
that you'd send it in and they.
they'll send it back going, no, that's rubbish. It was just the way I think. And so obviously it became this sort of scary experience. And I felt like I was letting everybody down. So it didn't help with my self-kindness one jot.
So, had you been more aware, what messages would you have given yourself? If you could speak to that
Oh, if I could speak to that
student.
girl now, woman, I would have told her that you're going to help. It's okay. They are not going to judge you. Yeah, I couldn't do it to myself. I can do it now because you've given me the prompt.
Yeah.
But back then, it was just me, my brain, and I.
I think perfectionism can be massive. You know, Brené Brown talks a lot about it, and I don't know her stuff well enough to quote it,
Yeah,
but it can feel like a shield. It can feel like a safe place, even though it's like an unattainable standard, because you're gonna meet these really high standards, and that will get you the praise and recognition and everything externally for the work that you're doing. Um, but at the same time, it's like you're not even allowing yourself the room to even have the experience of being in the experience, if that makes sense. Because you're so focused on making sure that the outcome is perfect
perfect. Yes.
that you're robbing yourself of the moment.
And do you know what is actually really interesting? I'll be mentioning sweet again because that was just an eye opener. The fact one of the questions was, what is perfection? And out of all the group, I was the only one that said there is no such thing as perfection.
Perfect answer.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Oh, God. And I did it first. So I now understand why he had to ignore me, because he needed that feedback of what people truly believed perfection is. And like you say, you don't get self regulated by it. It actually makes it harder for you to achieve what is possible.
Yeah, and I think it's important to have standards, right? For
Mm,
me, I fall short of them, and then it's about being kind to myself in the recognition of not
mm.
bludgeoning myself and just accepting that I'm human and can make mistakes and or sometimes just fall short of the mark
But
and giving myself that grace.
grace, yes, but do you realize the beauty is in the mistakes?
Not the kind of mistakes I make.
You see, this is where we do have a very differing opinion about perfectionism. I am very much, you've got to enjoy it or it's not enjoyable. And anything you do should, and you have every right to expect it to bring you joy.
Yeah,
And I,
for me, I get so focused on outcome
mm,
that for me, if there's a slight detour or a slight imperfection, I'm like, nope, let's chuck it in the bin and start again.
well, it's a bit like we said in our last interview that it was, I jump in with both feet without looking, and you're like tippy toe.
Yeah.
And I get, I was going to say a swear word, but I'm going to be good this
You
one.
can swear it's your podcast,
I
Susie.
get shit done now.
You do get shit done.
And so I am being kind to myself there
Hmm.
because I'm acknowledging what to some may seem like quite a small thing, because obviously they don't know me, and me doom scrolling into eternity was my journey
Yeah, and acknowledging that growth as well, taking the time to actually say, "Well, I've gone from this." It's letting
thing.
that move you.
Yeah. What I think happens with the perfectionism, like you said, it's a shield. But you also see it or try and see it from another person's perspective.
Hmm.
And you can't, because you're not a mind reader.
Yeah.
And two, if you're already hard on yourself, the responses are going to be negative.
Just rephrase that. It's not quite going in.
Okay, so I can't remember now. Oh, yeah, it was a brilliant thought.
I was listening, it just wasn't computing.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fine. ADHD doesn't come easily. It's basically saying that you have to be kind to yourself. You can't look at your perfectionism through someone else's eyes.
But I think that's the trap about perfectionism, isn't it? Because
Mhm.
it's always you want people to like you or get approval from what I put out and what
Mm.
I'm delivering and what I'm doing for people, as opposed to having that sense of inherent worth for people to come to. And if you do those things, then great, you're adding value.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the trap becomes when it's all about what you produce and then neglect who you are or fail to recognize that.
Yes,
Maybe. I don't know.
because you have taken somebody else's comment and it's gone into your brain, and you live with that one criticism. It's probably more criticisms than I'm giving you credit for, because, oh boy, when he criticizes himself, he criticizes.
Oh, I am tough on myself, but sometimes I need that. Sometimes for me, that voice has been a motivating factor.
Has been.
Has been.
Mm.
And now I need to be kinder to myself and use more cheerleader language.
And this is it, isn't it? It's the
Is it?
cheerleader language.
But
No,
I
no,
don't know if
no.
anyone else out there is like, yeah, if I didn't talk crap to myself, I wouldn't get anything done. Like, I don't know how many people that resonates with,
Actually,
but
yeah, it would be really good if you could comment so that we can see that we're not alone in our
well, we
self-battery.
know we're not alone.
Yes, we know
But
100% we're not alone, but to connect with others who are struggling in their journey, as they call it, whereas I just call it life. It's not a train ride, it's not a bus ride, it's life. So it's walking one step at a time. I'm learning,
that's still a journey
but it's not a
because
mechanical
it's
journey.
motion.
Yes, motion is good. Mechanical motion, not so good. I think we rely on electrical goods and motor vehicles and everything like this. It disconnects us. Speaking of the things that shape us, we have something really exciting.
Oh yes, very exciting news.
Yes, the Babushka Project. It initially was just me processing something I'd already known, but scientifically, it has been proven that childhood bullying affects the adult's life. So it doesn't stop when you cross that school threshold and close that door behind you. It comes with you like a ragged dog. So what we are doing, I am obviously quite emotionally connected to that. So I have persuaded.
There was strongly worded, I wouldn't say request because it wasn't a request. It was more of an order, along with you owe me, so you're doing this. But I'll let Susie continue.
Thank you for that, Parry. You just made me look evil.
No?
I am evil.
Just a little bit hypocritical.
I know. No, but the funny thing was, I did do that. I am not going to pretend I didn't. But straight after, I was like, "We're really sorry, Parry."
Yeah, I'll let you finish talking about it,
So, but no,
and then I'll say the last thing you said to me because it was just hilarious.
Oh, Jesus. Right. Okay. So it started with me just wanting to be an advocate, to be able to communicate with schools and the educational establishment to change how they treat bullying. Because primary schools are fantastic most of the time. It's the senior schools or high schools, as they call them now. They're taught about inclusion, being kind, caring, respectful in primary school. They get to senior school, you may as well have just left them on the moon.
And do you think that there's any difference to the social landscape that influences how easy it is or how advantageous it is to be kind to people? Is there something that makes kindness harder for teenagers?
Like you were saying, they can communicate with their friend even if they're sitting in the same room via phone, but they can't just have a conversation with them. And so that the connections, which are so important, aren't joining. So they just see their world and they don't see outside of that.
I think, and again, I'm not researched or fully aware of this. This is just me riffing now. But with a lot of the interactions that take place, and especially cyberbullying as well, if it's done through a phone, you're not physically engaged in the act. It's not like you are putting your whole body into the effort of victimizing someone. And so it's very easy to divorce the reality of what you're doing when
Mhm.
it's just your thumbs making a couple of
Yep.
motions.
And let me make it perfectly clear. This isn't just teenagers. This is where kindness in motion started because of experiences on TikTok where they were allowed to get away and say such disgusting things, and there was no consequence.
Right.
And it infuriated me. It was the other ones, the younger ones, that were being insulted and degraded. And I thought, this can't go on.
Some people might say, why let strangers, wherever they are in the world, looking and judging you over 30 seconds of what they see on a screen, why let that impact you?
We shouldn't. We should be totally hardened to it. But do you know what they say? And I'm trying to remember the saying properly now. You can hit me with sticks and stones, but words will never hurt me. No. The words delve into the psyche. Like he says, I'm not qualified in this, but from my experience, any negative, and you are proof of that as well, Parry, that the negatives leave us in a situation where it stays in your brain, which is
Yeah.
more insidious than if they were to punch you in the stomach.
I don't want to go too deeply into the experience, but quite often you're left wondering, okay, what's wrong with me? What's the problem I can fix? And
Mm-hmm.
so then you're so reactive to trying to fix yourself, and then the problem becomes who you are.
Yeah, you've just answered it. That is the problem with it, because we've now got a generation see social media very differently to how kids see it now. It's not our life force. To the kids now, it's a life force,
Right.
no matter how it's used. And we need to reframe the narrative, because when you're looking at your phone, you're not seeing the world.
No, and I think you're looking at your phone and you're ignoring the experience of having a body, right? Being in a room with people, it changes your body. You co-regulate, the mirror neurons fire, your whole social adaptive system check kicks in to help regulate you,
Mm.
or in some cases, dysregulate.
Dysregulation, my favorite buzzword.
That's part of what it means to be alive with another person in the
Mm.
space. And it's just unfortunate that so much of interaction and relationship now seems to be reduced to content. Someone has published quite a lot of work on self-kindness and self-compassion, and her name is Kristen Neff. She's divided self-kindness into three key aspects. First is self-kindness versus judgment, recognizing common humanity, practicing mindfulness, and not over-identifying with things that go on.
They're to be honoured.
And then they will pass, and you are
Yeah.
not your feelings. They are something that you are experiencing,
Okay. I
but
was
they are
doing really
transitory.
well until you went to mindfulness again.
Or at
The,
least I hope that's the takeaway. But again,
yeah.
I don't mean to quote her work out of context.
The judgment versus
Self
self-compassion. That one is the hardest one, because we have these internal voices. Again, it kind of loops back to the perfectionism, but we always feel that we should do better.
A lot of the time, if you take a step back, and it can be really hard to catch yourself in the moment, where is this voice coming from? Half the time, it's not even your voice.
Mm.
It's just stuff that you've internalized from everyone else's expectations, your expectations of what they expect that have never, that aren't even based in reality. It's of this idealized self. Um, but yeah, like those voices in your head, they're not necessarily yours.
No, they're history, and history does like to repeat itself. You do it without even realizing it. That's why the self-compassion versus judgment is the most essential part. The most confident person in the world will always have a wobble as well. It would be odd if they didn't, because that means they're truly disconnected from the world.
And with boundaries, because being like super vulnerable to a stranger in relationships that can't hold that weight. It's not that there's anything wrong with your emotions, with who you are, but there are certain relationships can hold weight, and you have to be realistic about how much weight you can expect your relationship to hold before you go unloading. And also having boundaries for yourself as well, so that you make sure those people who hear your story or who you are vulnerable with, you get to see that raw part of you, have earned it.
I completely agree with that. It's just when you were saying that, boundaries, mayday, mayday.
Yes, you don't. Suzy doesn't like boundaries.
I'm not very good with boundaries. I'm best with somebody else's boundaries. But me, I am like this massive open book. And me learning to do boundaries is an act of self-kindness. I'm only just realizing it now. So it's all very fresh and new. So you may be surprised in the next episode. I may just be a completely different person.
Should be a man.
I'll be a man instead.
Anyway, bringing it back to self-kindness.
We need to stop judging ourselves. We live in a society of judgment. A lot of people watch reality TV. And what do people do when they watch these shows? They judge them.
There's a bit of schadenfreude that goes on where you're like watching the housewives that have so much money and they are blackout drunk and stumbling down the stairs. And there's something that like tickles the brain to think, oh, I'm glad I'm not you right now. It's bitchy a little bit.
That's
a thing about having standards, because you're watching that and thinking, well, I would not want that for myself.
so you're judging.
And the thing is, the way we judge others often becomes the way we judge ourselves.
them.
Judgment is a fact of life. Like, reality is society judges, people judge, but you have to be, I think, really fair with yourself on what standards you hold yourself accountable to and what standards you allow.
Standards are really important to you, aren't they?
I think so, because it's just part of making sense of the world. Yeah, like I'm a judgy person in some ways, and there are times where I can completely remove judgment as well.
Which is really what this episode is all about.
The way that we are learning and muddling our way through this.
We are muddling our way through in a really sort of productive manner.
And that's just our experience, but we'd really love to hear yours too.
We would love to grow our community and learn from others because, like I said previously in the episode, we are not alone in our own vulnerabilities and our lack of self-kindness. And it's good to know that others who resonate with it.
Yeah, and just because me and Suzy are the ones that have got the microphones in front of our gobs and we're the ones chatting, your experience matters to us as well. So if you want to share, go ahead. We will read it. We might respond to it, but it will definitely make an impact.
There'll be no might. I will respond. You can just.
I don't do socials.
He is very antisocial, literally. Oh, that was quite funny.
So before we wrap up, what's one thing you're taking away from today?
If I was to take away anything from this conversation, is that I am going to continue with my journal and I'm going to use it as a way of learning that there is a lot of good about me, and that is an act of kindness. How about you, Parry?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to catch those moments where I could be practicing being kinder to myself and choose that option consciously.
And do the list thing you were talking about.
Yeah, and like gratitude lists and things like that. A part of my new routine, but I'll keep it up.
If it works for you, then do it. Definitely. I just don't do lists. They scare me.
And that's a whole new episode.
That is a whole new episode. And we will be back in 2 weeks' time with hopefully a guest, but I'm not going to promise.
If we get really desperate, we'll get Suzy a sock puppet, and then we'll find out why Suzy doesn't like lists.
That's another fantastic subject, because the simplest of things can throw us off the track to self-kindness and self-compassion. And when it's do a list to make sure you are self-compassionate I'm screwed.
I'm not a list person.
But you have found there's been some solace.
All right, let's bring this in for a landing. And as always,
I would like to say thank you for listening.
and thank you for having us in your ears.
And always remember, keep safe, keep happy, but most of all, be kind to yourselves and each other.
Thank you. Now go you live your lives.
If this lifted you even a little, hit follow, share it with someone who could use a spark of kindness, and come with us as this movement grows. You're part of this now, and we're really glad you're here.